Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We are going live this morning as part of our W.Live series with the amazing Lara Morgan, who is a serial investor, serial entrepreneur, and the founder of Scentered, among other businesses. So I'm going to just see if I can add her. Let's see. There we go. Oh, inviting Lara. Good morning, Naomi. Hi there, Zena. Let's see if we can add Lara. Sometimes it takes a few goes, which is why Lara and I decided to start a little earlier so we can make sure. That we could connect. Right. Lara, I don't know if you can see me or hear me. Getting a message saying I'm Scentered is unable to join. Let's keep trying. Good morning, everyone. We're just trying to get Lara from Scentered on with us, so just bear with us for a few minutes. Morning, everyone. Right, let me try. Lara, if you can hear me, I'm getting a message saying that Scentered can't join for some reason. But maybe what we'll do is invite your personal account as well, just in case.
I bet you're nervous now. Sorry, I missed the first notification.
Don't worry. I'm not sure which account you joined from Scentered.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
or
cool.
Maybe it's actually I am Lara Morgan in the title. God, it really doesn't matter.
No, don't. Well, we're still going to get to have a conversation, which is amazing. Yeah. And I see there are lots of people online this morning, which is really good. Everyone's up bright and early on a Monday morning.
I don't know what Mac thinks he's going to learn, but that's quite funny to see him there. And Ian. Oh, the belly. You see these people who are stalking you. Anyway, in a good way. Let me be clear.
Well, good morning, everyone. For those that are just joining us, I am very fortunate to be going live today with Lara Morgan, who is a force of business, serial entrepreneur, investor, the founder of Scentered, among other businesses. Lara, I know how busy you are, so I'm incredibly grateful to have you joining us today for W.Live, which is part of our Instagram Live series. Can I give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and tell everyone about what you do? And I know you're going to be you're usually very humble about it, so I'll fill in the gaps afterwards, but you...
She got out of the shower trying to stuff in yoga before the call. Anyway, so I have had a lucky journey. Short story long, father went bankrupt when I was 18. That doesn't sound too lucky, but it stuffed up my idea of going to university, which is a point I'm making a lot at the moment as I've been doing speakers for schools. And it's really important that we don't terrify children with the idea that if they can't do university, they've changed, you know, it's because there's so much opportunity in apprenticeships and things like that out there. So had to get a job, didn't know what I wanted to do, actually wanted to become a pro golfer. So that went out the window fairly quickly because I needed to pay the bills. And 2 weeks in, I started paying rent to my mum and dad because they'd had the bailiffs in. It wasn't much fun. So I basically sort of learned on my uppers, learned budgeting by having my own pathetic budget, and gradually started selling. And, you know, if I was to say that there's any skill that I've kind of retained is I enjoy selling. I love it. I think it's a career you need to professionalize and be proud of, and we're rubbish at it in Britain. So I then spent a few years learning my trade. I had an extraordinary career in the sense that early years I worked in Hong Kong, then the Middle East, then New Zealand, selling advertising space or product promo, and ended up running my own business age 23 because there were no jobs in Britain and I needed a job. So started selling, I know this is ridiculous, sewing kits and shower caps. From sewing kits and shower caps, 17 years later, we sold, and when I say we, this amazing group of people that I worked with, who I'm privileged still to work with a few today, built a business that sold more than sewing kits and shower caps. Basically everything that you want to nick in a hotel room except the furniture and the TV, try and stop at that. And we sold that business. I was 99% shareholder for over £20 million. So that changed my life and my family's life. By then I'd had 3 children, kind of wanted to be at home a bit. That was useless. I'm rubbish at that. I'm rubbish at a lot of things. And since then I've kind of been finding my way in, and I'm very privileged to invest in some British invention like Gate 8 luggage, wicked travel product, now specializing in crew. I have Yogi Bear, which is an unbelievable performance mat. Kit Bricks, which is any outdoor swimmer or sports person's necessary piece of kit. Kit Bricks is just for organizing stuff. And obviously I have my passion, which is this mini, I'm not allowed to say pocket rocket in America. It means something quite different, ladies and gentlemen. But in Britain, I would say that they, you know, the application of stop, inhale, reset, and the idea that you can breathe and feel better. Scentered is all about that meaning, using scent, I guess, to cope with stress. And that's my passion today, amongst some other interests like mad bicycle riding and stuff like that.
But you know, Laura, I think for me, that's one of the things that makes your approach so special, is that you are someone who does kind of, or has the potential to live hard and fast. And I know you've done that for a big portion of your life, but you also really understand the importance of balance and how, you know, the importance of breathing and taking time, even if they were just really small moments, to incorporate those into your life in order to manage stress. And interestingly, we've recently done some surveys across the women's chapter community, and with the community membership, which is both entrepreneurs and professional women, as well as our founder community, all of them said stress management was a skill that they wanted to learn.
So funnily enough, Michelle, I got up early this morning because a friend of mine, her son did work experience with me. So the one thing I'd like to say is, for any of you that aren't doing shadowing or giving some kids a chance, please do that, because Harry changed my life last week. He's 17. He invigorated me. He made me perform better. He made me learn stuff. He made me open my eyes digitally. Of course, he sorted out my laptop when it broke. I love Harry. But more importantly, the exchange was, you know, nothing other than giving poor Harry a week of hell, carrying my bag, not exactly, but, you know, following me around and shadowing me. And what it reminded me of, and I was then correcting an article this morning, is that you just can't do everything perfectly. And actually, you know, I've made mistakes sometimes, and I've had a really rough 2 years with, you know, a luggage supply company, a hotel supply company, a spa, everything closed. It's been brutal. And so, you know, sometimes you make mistakes along the way, but actually the time with others and the time with ourselves, and I haven't had any of that for a long time. And I just, you know, there is not balance, Michelle. There isn't, because on the minute that you think you've got it, something goes tits up. And that's reality. And it can be completely outside. You know, the plumbing can leak in your flat. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
So it comes at you. And the one thing that I was writing about this morning in an article, because we're about to launch a meditation mini candle set. It's brilliant. I'm shit at meditating as well, by the way, but I do need to remind myself to stop, inhale and reset, which is our mantra. And I was writing about a decision I made many years ago, which is I refuse to be guilty. And because there will be a disproportionate amount of women on your call, I would just say to you, reconsider how you choose to feel about everything you do, because when you start making good choices, that you're not going to be good at everything, and then you're not going to be able to do it all, although you can have a damn good go. I mean, you know, I'm extremely lucky and I'm still having a damn good go. It doesn't mean that I don't fail all the time, because I do. And I make mistakes and I'm not in touch with my aunt enough. And you know, things happen, but I chose not to be guilty. And that takes a weight off, because I cannot do something about something that's happened in the past. I just look forward.
Mm. Well, isn't that an important lesson that we've learned through the last 2.5 years with COVID, that there are some things, there will always be things every week, every day that happen that you cannot control.
Yeah.
And if you carry guilt or you beat yourself up about those things, you're unnecessarily loading your, you know, your emotional, but also your responsibility load on a day-to-day basis. Because, and so many of us are guilty of this, not being able to separate what we can control and what we can't.
I mean, I hope you don't mind me saying so, but we checked in earlier this morning and we were laughing because I actually happened to be in my yoga kit, but running towards trying to get to the mat in time to then wash my hair. And of course I have no makeup because I never bother. I can't be asked. But you were saying, well, I'm sneaking off downstairs because I don't want to make a noise before the kids arrive. And we're just like, that's fine, right? And actually what I think COVID, thinking of the positive things, I think it's normalized some sort of adult behavior and gone, do you know what? A lot of us have families, not all of us. A lot of us have to juggle. Some of us have sick parents. Some of us have, and it's character building that we can be more of ourselves. But actually, ironically, I hope we're going to go and talk on about a bit more about the sort of investment side, because we, in my experience as now an investor, and it doesn't matter that I'm man or woman, it just annoys me that I'm too rare.
Mm-hmm.
And lucky enough to be in the position I'm in, albeit I'll say very clearly at the outset, I'm no longer investing in anything new. I help as many people as I can along the way. But women are too worried about how everybody else sees them. And actually, they've just got to learn to fake it before they make it, a bit like me claiming that we were the #1, you know, global luxury provider of brand licensed products to hotels, probably 7 years before we were, you know. But I thought, oh, sod it, not, you know, how's somebody going to measure my ridiculous claim? Wasn't damaging anyone. We were really, really good. But we need to take a breath and give ourselves a break. And then we need to go boldly, because somehow in the psyche of what we do, nurture and all of that stuff, we let the guys get ahead because we don't blag it enough and we're not bold enough. And it winds me up more and more as there isn't enough energy in women asking for money well.
Mm. Yeah. And I think to your point about what the last 2 years have shown us is that I think that it has definitely normalized real life. And that you may be on a call and your kid's going to walk in or your dog is going to bark, or, you know, it's removed this, I think, this pressure to be 100% ready or 100% polished.
Well, I mean, yeah.
And now, you know, there is no time like the present. And if you don't ask, you don't get. And I think you've really taught me that.
Yay! My dad taught me that, by the way. And the other day, my daughter was looking after the dogs and we were abroad, and I wrote her and I said, thanks a lot, Tams. That's been magnificent. She wrote back, Mummy, if you really cared, you'd send me 75 quid for the caretaker. And on the basis that she asked, she got, right? So, and actually as a lesson for our kids, you know, there's nothing wrong with rewarding them. You can call it bribery if you like, but actually, do you know what? We all do what we're rewarded to do.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. I always tell the story. My dad ran his own business, and if I asked for something, which I always did, he would come back straight away with, write me a business plan for that. Or he would say, put forward your case, and if you can show me how you can make some of the money or do some of it, then I will match what you earn. And actually, it was really good because he never just gave it.
Yeah. So same with kids, right?
Yeah.
Holiday or whatever. But in the same way, I'm just going to move to kind of my enterprise experience around investment. And investors will invest in the character of the human being, right? And actually they want their money back. They want to be convinced that they're going to get their money back, but actually they're prepared to take a risk or else they're not in the investment game. So they have certain values. And what I see with women is that we don't compel the investor enough to go, what can the investor also bring to the game? And what can I say and do to convince them that I have the knowledge and I have the momentum and I have the power, and particularly momentum at the moment, because if you're not in profit, you're probably not investable. meaning people are, the liquidity will shrink, but actually there is money out there that wants a good home. But I was just thinking, you know, in preparation for the call, I was thinking, you know, you've got to be less prissy, girls and whoever, about being challenged, because you need to be able to defend challenging conversations in the investment game that convince the investor that they're in safe hands, right? And if you become a bit threatened and sensitive and your back goes up and you're a bit wet, frankly, then actually what happens when you know, another pandemic happens? I mean, we didn't even know the language of pandemic until recently. So we have to be defendable and professional. I definitely would try and carve out a niche market if I could. But actually, if you believe you're world class and you've got a unique selling point, you've really grafted and you can show it, then you will get investment capital. But you've also got to be really clear about being challenged in the process, because someone is risking their hard-earned pennies. And the other thing is, frankly, you know, it's not that complicated to take small risks if people gather together, which again is sort of, the women I come across don't often syndicate their risk. So if I was going back a period where I was learning and growing, you know, get an accountant in your group, get a tech person, and don't necessarily make it all women either, because I don't believe in playing just with the girls. That's frankly bonkers. You know, I always say when I speak at women's chapter, A, it's good to see the blokes, and B, don't forget that we're in a unisex world. In fact, we're a more interesting world than ever before. So all shapes and sizes are welcome, but don't just surround yourself by, you know, it's who you surround yourself. And we play in a big playground, and sadly, proportionally, the blokes are in the playground more than we are.
And I remember one of the things that you said at our events, and I think this kind of flows through to something that we're really trying to address at Women's Chapter, is knowing your numbers. And that really supports that defendable element, doesn't it? That if you're not on top of your numbers, how could you expect anybody to invest in your business? And to say, you know, how many young women say it, how many business owners say, oh, I don't like the number side of the business.
Nor do I. I loathe them. And in fact, during COVID, I took my eye off the ball. And it, you know, it doesn't matter who you are in life. If you, sorry, Alexa's just spoken up. Alexa, shut up. Alexa, off. There's the world. So I took my eye off the ball during, I mean, I didn't take my eye off. I did. I had too many things going tits up, frankly. It doesn't matter who you are. There should be limitations on your own personal risk, what you choose to invest, etc. It also meant that I was a hypocrite. So I made mistakes, because I'm deeply clear that people are what makes you successful. But if you take your eye off the ball and you're juggling too many things, in the end, you realize you've just bitten off more than you can chew. So you have to rein it back. And when we're investing, people that are investing in us are looking for focus. You cannot expect someone risking their money. And actually, it's a bit of a dragon's den question, is they find you out if you've got something else you're doing, or you siphoned it off, or whatever it is. So, you know, how do you get on with the founders? Well, first of all, you start with complete transparency, and you say, do you know what, the one thing I'm never going to miss is my children's sports day, or I never missed a nativity play. It took me 9 times to get a Mary, but it was worth it. You know, there are memories that we have, and there's humanity. And I think that actually people are too frightened of the people in suits. And actually we need to be more human and real. And actually, I think there's a real positive outlook from that point of view that comes out of COVID as well. You know, that you can be you. And there's definitely an upswing of people going, actually, we need to be balancing things out. And actually, diversity does bring value, because it creates a different input. So instead of feeling that you're on the back foot when you're going with your, I mean, I call it about selling your baby. Ultimately, your baby is your prized possession, but actually you've chosen to sell some of it. And so present it to the best of your abilities, and be really real about how you've nurtured it and the mistakes you've made, because we make mistakes. And also, I think my personal opinion is that when you're bringing on investment, you want value from them. So don't be afraid. They can't be successful, the investor class, if you don't build a business. You should be really proud of the fact that you've grafted and sweat and moved boxes and bloody well sorted banners out this weekend because I've got too many flipping different banners and they're not marked properly, and I still get my hands dirty because on a Sunday after a run I was sweaty, horrible, disgusting. You know, I need to demonstrate that I still give a toss about what I do enormously. So is there a fit of personality between you and your investor is what I'm saying.
Well, and I think Whitney Bromberg Hawkins from Flowerbox, her advice for taking on an investor was don't do business with somebody that you're not prepared to go out with for dinner regularly, or to have one-to-one conversations with. I mean, you do have to have good chemistry and you need to like them. And I think, you know, we actually, Women's Chapter was offered some investment some time back, and I walked away because it was just too many red flags. And I knew that the fit wasn't right for us. And it's not a decision I regret at all.
Right, exactly. How did you feel when you made the brave, scary decision to turn down money that you might really want, like? Actually, you feel fine. And you know, right? And that's cool.
Well, I knew it would make me ultimately feel worse. So in that moment, because I think we're taught, aren't we, and maybe particularly as women, to say yes to things, to take opportunities our way, you know, come our way, to not say no, or to have difficult conversations. And so for me, it was kind of part of that. And this has been a big part of what I've learned over the last 2 years, is to set more boundaries, and to say no more, because
you know that I'm a massive believer, but actually, you know, I make the mistake myself, and from time to time I have to reset. So I came down this morning and rewrote my priorities list and thought, ouch, I need to deal with that quickly. In fact, you just reminded me of something else completely, you know, but I laugh because I will also treat myself that when I'm brave. There's a brilliant book called Eat That Frog. And that's
the big believer in eating the frog.
Right, do it early. Do it. I'm straight after this. I've got a second big frog, and if I eat that second big frog, I've put, you know, another prospect out into the ether. I'm going, please, and I've got a thing off my desk that I needed a fresh mind. I've been thinking about over the weekend, and now I just need to do it before I'm distracted into the melee of ill-disciplined email responding, as opposed to hierarchically working, because hierarchical work, as in what's the most valuable thing I can do. And this is where also, if you're overstretched with people, you know, you need to be on, either you or your management team need to be on the money, caring for the people. Without Mandy, Dawn and my team, you know, I'm toast. But I absolutely believe that if you get the difficult stuff out of the way, in the same way that when you ask for money, make it clear at the beginning, you're asking for X, and if that person doesn't have X, don't continue the conversation, because you're already becoming a mismatch at a date, and that dinner party isn't, you know, that dinner meeting isn't going well. So, you know, criteria at the outset. What are you looking for? What are you going to use it for? When do you need it by? Because nowadays also, I think the one thing that may change in the investment landscape is tranches, meaning one of my investments has just had a broken tranche, meaning they didn't meet their target, so they won't get the second big tranche from the VC.
Okay.
You know, that's where they've promised, let's say 2 million. The first million came, it's been spent, not with the right results. Possibly the market changed, and in this case, I think it to some extent did. But also the business will evolve and change. And I think the other thing that all entrepreneurs need to be more sensitive about is evolution. I've never seen that business plan that you might have written actually deliver 100%. I mean, Women's Chapters evolved. You're going to reignite membership, and you know, the things that we do going into where we are now with this business. You know, if Pacific Direct, my first business, had stood still, you know, we would have been a hotel supply company to London hotels. In the end, we supplied 110 countries. I like to travel, so to some extent it was fitting it round. It was just really good fun to run a global business. But, you know, what is it that excites you about your business that you can also build in? I mean, I used to own Dry Robe, and Dry Robe is a sort of outdoor coat. And I invested in it because I like triathlon, I like the outdoors, and I think it's a great product. But actually be real about, you know, what value you can bring to any of the investments or taking on money. Do you believe the person comes with more than £1? Meaning, intellectual capital, a black book, another pound, because you might want follow-on capital, and follow-on capital is a really big sign of this person's doing what they say they're going to do. I will invest more again in the next round at a higher rate or whatever.
Mm. So some of the things you're saying now, I think, are sort of now very naturally leading into how to for success, I think. You know, for those that might be listening to us now and possibly are in the early stages or growth stages of their business, you know, one of the things that's really kind of stood out for me is that hierarchy emailing or responding, and thinking about, you know, only focusing on the things that actually drive a return for your business. And I think so many people, and I'm guilty of it as well, and it's something I have to keep bringing myself back to, is, you know, and teaching our teams to do the same, to prioritize the things that drive a return, because that means your team can grow, you become more profitable, and that uncomfortable feeling of not dealing with something that you were approached to do that would have been a nice to do. Yeah. You get better at that, I think, saying no, or pushing those a little further down the list.
Yeah, but it's like the finance piece, right? None of us like that, unless you're an accountant. And accountants don't tend to enterprise businesses, ironically, because they're box fillers and they follow the rules. That's characteristically. Thank God for them, because I'll never be one. But completely abdicating the financial response and not, you know, not thinking through actually what are the economics of what makes us money. So I can give a million examples where I've been ill-disciplined and thought it was going to be. And of course, sometimes you go in fully considered about the fact that you're prioritizing and it goes wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So you might have a deal that you're very excited about, and that at the 11th minute, the person turns around and goes, we've had a strategy change. It's not you. It's not the product. We bloody love it, but it's just not right for us now because we've had to. I mean, this is going to happen all the time at the moment. People are going to tighten their belts in business language. You know, there are people's jobs probably, ironically, in some areas at the top end, more at risk than in the bottom end, because we haven't got enough bottom end workers, so to speak, the beginning. And if it isn't going to make you, you know, you have to. My father had this picture of a funnel: big balls, medium balls, small balls. And even though that's an old-fashioned approach to selling, and actually you really want to target the really big needle-moving balls and not others, sometimes in my life, I need the personal sanity of having a few medium balls and even a small risky ball that goes, well, actually, if we tried that direction and it went well, that becomes a really big one. So I have this vision in my head of this ridiculous funnel where I've got big, small and medium balls, and disproportionately I spend time on the flipping big ones. So there's this visual in my head that says, on my list, are the big balls named, and am I constantly pushing them through that funnel to conversion of whatever they bring? And then on top of that, the medium might be, in my language, my headaches, and there's still things I need to deal with. But again, from an investment point of view, stuff goes wrong. There are skeletons. You need to get them out of the cupboard. You need to make sure your business is due diligenceable. But at a small stage, you just got to have clean books, a decent business plan, a great product, and a really good attitude about that product and what you want to do with and how it solves a problem. You've got to really communicate. So, you know, with Scentered, says she, you know, stop, inhale, reset needs education. So that sense, that mindfulness takes educational sales. So we've relentlessly been working on the things that communicate that it's okay, like the Samaritans say, not to be okay, and that people have mental wobbles. Well, actually humanizing that with a story that makes it realistic, and so that, you know, actually I've got my menopausal one in here, the love balm, and de-stress for the talk. But, you know, it's okay to admit when stuff's gone wrong. And if then an investor wants you to be human and real and honest, and they're testing that honesty, but equally, other way around, which I never knew when I was a lot less grey haired, is you need to test them, right? What have they done for others? So first and foremost, don't have a call with an investor unless you've taken some kind of references. You know, call up, find out, is this a mad lunatic from hell that you'd never want to touch? you know, find out. And as you get bigger, there's some, you know, what's the size of their fund? What stage are they at in their fund? But early days, you're probably talking about, you know, seed investor or family office, private small money. It could be a lot bigger because tech requires a lot more money. I'm not a tech investor. I know nothing about it. But, you know, you should not be signing over away and shares without a clear, you know, if you're going to have a partner or there's two of you getting into this business together, that shareholder agreement, who does what, where the boundaries are and what the rules of the game are, those things matter, right? They really matter, because when you then go to the investor's going to go, so, you know, what are the rules? And by the way, are we joint CEO? Because the title has sensitivity. I think it's bullshit. I don't care what you call me. I'm chief big potato to one of my businesses. But, you know, that needs to be crystallized before, and you need to be ready, investment ready in that language. You know, so the small startups, they need their paperwork.
Yeah, and I think that's something we have also really been trying to raise awareness around, because it comes up time and time again. You know, crossing your T's, dotting your I's, having proper agreements in place, supplier agreements, marketing agreements, all those kinds of things, because that can actually cost you money. Or it can result in a massive setback just because of a piece of paper that you either didn't read properly, or it wasn't, you know, it wasn't put together correctly by someone who's making sure that your needs are being served or your side is being served. Because I think most of the time, any of these template agreements that you download are always weighted to somebody's position.
Of course they are. It's like a non-disclosure agreement, you know. Is it a joint one, or is it actually all in your favor? And you know, there are, I mean, you can get checklists which can be enormously helpful, but a bit of healthy skepticism and some professional advice wouldn't go amiss. After all, you could end up owning a lot less of something that becomes very valuable. And I love this, Michelle, I love saying this, because I think it's the simplest way of me communicating the importance of share selling, right? Because share selling is not share giving away, right? Share selling is you sell something, you usually get a return. What I say to people is, imagine you are now, let's say 60% owner, and you go into a share dilution, but at 60% owner, you're still working until the end of Tuesday for all the other shareholders, if there's 100% of a working week, right? So if Monday's 20%, Tuesday, etc., Tuesday afternoon, that 40% club that you're working for, you've not worked for yourself yet. So now you go into a dilution. Are you thinking ahead? You've got 60% today. Do you want to be working until Wednesday lunchtime for these other people because you're now going to sell up to 50%? And actually, I see, and this is really painful because I see it in women all the time, they bring in a lightweight, untested shareholder, bloke, 9 times out of 10, apologies, but I've seen it too much. They're emotional and ridiculous. My husband did not have 1 share in Pacific Direct. My mother did, right? And my husband's the most gracious man alive, who without him, I could not have built that group of companies. And without Charlie, and obviously we very happily, after 26 years still together, probably want to trade me in for a younger one quite soon. But the point is that it's those shares that you're negotiating over. So sure as hell, you should treat them as rare as reindeer, and respect them.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you raised that, actually, because one of the things that we've been outlining or kind of covering with our legal partner has been this sort of pitfall that a lot of women make, where they make their husbands directors of their businesses. And then when you hit the 40s and relationships change and things start, which, you know, I'm certainly seeing that with a lot of my peer group at the moment. Lots of people that you never expected, and I'm one of them, that you get divorced. And I was very fortunate that wasn't my situation. But yeah, I mean, would that be a red flag for you as an investor?
Yeah.
If you looked at a woman's business and her husband was just a director and taking a salary, but not an active.
And worse than that, time and time I see a great product and a woman solving a problem, inventing something, because I will only invest in product. I don't invest at all anymore, I hasten to add. But time and time again, I see a woman held back by her husband saying, you know, should we? And it's bullshit. Follow your heart. I know of a number of products that are brilliant that have been held back by the other half because maybe he is today the income earner, but he didn't bring up the kids, right? Maybe and too often women have this nagging desire to do their thing. And you know, they weren't lucky like me. They didn't have a bankrupt dad and they didn't have to start early. I started at 23, and what a lucky gift that was. Mm. But, you know, they may not also have the risk tolerance, or actually worse than that, they have good risk tolerance and they're living with an accountant who's conservative as crap. They've put him on the shareholding because they feel guilty and embarrassed that they don't think he should be there and he hasn't earned the place. But it's 100% her idea. Mm. And then you describe it as she's held back. And you're right. I mean, I wouldn't touch that. And in fact, I've had situations in another investment where somebody got his partner involved, and actually from then it became a nightmare. She was an accountant and she started cooking the books. Mm. You know, this is real life. People behave badly, you know, and had I not had a bit more nous about me, we would have been left up the creek without a, you know, what's it? And I'm not perfect, you know, by no means am I perfect, and I've made mistakes and the people card is impossible. But the one thing you've got is shares, and you ought to treat them with gold dust respect. Mm.
So, Lara, obviously the last 2.5 years have been really challenging. And as you very candidly said, many of your businesses were in the sectors that were most hard hit.
Yeah.
But going forward, things aren't looking that rosy either. What advice would you have for somebody who may be feeling the pressure of, you know, increased living costs, especially if they're self-funded? You know, yeah. How do you keep motivated, and what would you say to a woman in that position?
So, you know, this is not meant to sound glib, but I'm going to be a bit glib, okay?
Go.
There are 0.2 billion people in the world. There are over 221 countries or something like that. There are enormous reasons that businesses should look to export and to look to wider markets when times get tough, because why steal someone else's cake in Britain when you can actually open a new market? One thing that's enormously important is when things get really tough, the best thing we can always sometimes do is just step back onto the business, by which I mean have a real break, you know, a proper break, take a weekend off. I mean, I work most weekends in some shape or form. And then every now and again I go, do you know what? I'm not going to, or I go on a mad bike ride and I can't think of anything except the next pedal. So I manage my own ineptness and my ridiculous enterprise addiction. And I think you then step back and you say, actually, if I'm brutally honest with myself and I look at my things to do list, am I being the best executor that I can be? And then I also suggest, and I've just done this with one of my companies, what are the 2 or 3 enormous bits of the puzzle that I could really play more of a part moving or doing? Who do I need to talk to who really moves the needle? Which is the company that's going to be the name drop customer? Even frankly, if I start to take a cleaning job at the Dorchester, that changed our lives, because we could say we supplied the Dorchester. I did sell them sewing kits, I hasten to add, but you know, what's the thing that in your gut that tells you, do it, spend a disproportionate amount of time focused on it, because everything else is going tits up anyway, perhaps. And actually you sometimes have to get singularly back focused and say no more than yes. And, you know, there are going to be people who product copy you and people that piss you off along the way, but you can't change that necessarily. So focus on your own road. And if it is your passion and your belief, don't be shut to the influence of others, and don't be shut to actually see what the bloody competition are doing when you're doing this reset, because you might be missing a big trick and they might be well ahead of you in that. And I always used to study competition. And ultimately, if it comes out and it says to you, this is just too hard, then don't lose the house, right? You know, I put up my house in 2003 because Pacific Direct had a massive cash flow issue, right? All the hotels had stopped buying because of September the 11th. We hadn't got through it. We had too much stock. It was really tough, a bit like COVID. And you take risks, but sometimes you go, and in my heart of hearts, it wasn't a difficult risk. I mean, it was difficult enough that I forgot to tell my husband. I didn't forget that hard, but I told him 6 months later. And I won't ever regret that difficult decision for a day. But equally, recently, I've walked away from a business because it's just not worth the stress and the heartache. You know, so, and it's not failure, it's learning. And we in Britain need to learn that a business failure is progress, because the next time you'll do it better. And in America, they celebrate and invest in people that have had that scar, right? Because, you know, organizational skills are all very well, but the ability to sell your product is the only thing that pays the bills. And if ultimately today's market is closed to you, it's really tough. So find new markets or find new avenues for the product. Or maybe there's an unloved product that you need to reignite, right? Mm. You know, I mean, it is tough out there, Michelle. There's no question about it. I'm not going to hide it. So you have to duck and dive a bit.
Mm. No, and I mean, Lara, all of this has been such valuable advice, and I can see everybody's, you know, endorsing that in the comments. So thank you so much for your time today.
Should we ask if anybody's got a question? Because I quite like dealing with questions, no doubt.
Yeah, well, if anyone does have a question, do pop in, pop it down here. We've had lots of people kind of saying, you know, really the authenticity piece resonates with them and how they've had to learn that lesson. I mean, I think one of the clear things that's come out of this conversation too is that cash is king. Don't spend money you don't have, which is another mistake that lots of startup businesses make. Going after that shiny look and feel when actually if you scratch beneath the surface.
So actually, some people will really not gel with this comment, but I worry constantly that we're being sucked into huge sort of media, high performance cost when actually you've got a brilliant phone, right? And actually, if you're spending budget on stuff that you're over glamorizing the stage, you don't need to be L'Oreal. You don't need to be, you know, the #1 pet food company in the land. You just need a decent photograph on your Instagram. And I'm sorry, but I think some people will like it and some people won't. Well, welcome to the real world. There's 7.2 billion people. Some of them are going to like it. And don't be too hard on yourself, because you may have to cut some corners. And there's nothing wrong with a bit of corner cutting as long as it's with integrity always. But I think a lot of people need to question what they're spending their money on when they tighten their belt, their priorities.
And that goes back to a piece of advice you gave in the very beginning when lockdown first happened. I was very fortunate to have a conversation with you, and you said, cut now and cut deep. But it's so simple and so true that how many of us don't have a constant eye on what we're actually spending? You know, that if you go into your accounting system and you look at all the money going out, what's it going out on?
Yeah, line by line. One of the big ones, I'll bet you everybody here that has a tech business and a Shopify has plug-in apps and they're not getting return on investment, right?
So I think we've had a question here. How do you choose advisors who have already asked for equity in the business?
So how do you choose the advisors who've already asked? So first of all, I presume, I mean, when you say asked, I mean bought equity in the business. You mean, so somebody might have a board seat as part of their investment.
Yes, and I mean, that's quite common, isn't it? That you would give away equity in exchange for a skill or service that ordinarily you might not be able to afford.
Yeah, and but you need to be really clear with that board seat what your expectations are. And by the way, I think board conversations are bullshit at a small stage. I mean, if you're below probably as much as £1 million, I'd say, you know, the idea of having a board is more like having a mentorship and some really good advisors that can help you along the way, management meetings that are really going to work for you. But I think the answer to the question is that you look at the skill set. I mean, there's this old fashioned thing, Myers-Briggs, and then it became Belbin, and then it became, so it's the mapping. And I would always go for the person that has more skills in and which is easy for me because I'm a salesperson, but you know, what are the skills that that person could bring to the business that you don't have, that you could then milk like crazy and then move on to the next gap in your skills. So bring in a great marketeer and see what they're doing and then move on from there again.
And also, I think in one of the pitfalls I think that people need to be aware of around that is that if you bring in someone who has really big corporate experience and is used to working with very big budgets, they may have the skills, but they might not be the right fit for your business, because you will not be able to spend that amount of money activating what you probably need, but it's much further down the line for you.
Too early. So this, it's like age and stage, right?
Yeah.
How much are you really getting into the business? What's the business potential really? And with this current investment that you're going to bring in, what's your expected return on that investment? As in, do your numbers. It's an equation, and there's this thing called modeling, which I also knew nothing about until my first exit. And then I ended up having to spend 20 grand on it because I needed these offers for the business modeled.
Mm-hmm.
And how you learn the value of cash, the value of payout, the value of bonus against exceptional returns, all these other structures that when you exit at a higher level, I mean, we made 3.3 million EBITDA, so we knew what we were doing. Well, my team did, at least I didn't. Everything has a price and everything has a stage and a timing, like funds have timing. So you need to know, how important is the money that you're taking on board to the investor? Because if they're going to suddenly turn around and need it back, ouch. And so is there a clause that says they can't have it back, but can you imagine the strain that puts on the relationship? So it's those emotional conversations that you want to test in terms of the advisors that you bring on board, which is, give me an example of what you would, as a question, I would say, give me an example of what you would do in this situation, test their stress.
Wow. And are there any kind of formulas that possibly you use or you're aware that are used that would help you understand what kind of return you should expect on an investment or something that you spend for an element of your business? So, for example, I've heard the formula that every staff member you take on should add £100,000 to your business.
That's rubbish.
Which for a small business is, that may only just be turning over that.
Yeah, I mean, that's so that first of all, it depends on the size of the business. So the idea that you can gracefully claim they should bring £100,000, actually, the truth is you should do ratios per member of staff, right? So if you take your overall profit each year and you divide it by the number of staff, that's how much profit per member of staff makes, right? Yeah. And as you get bigger, that unfortunately quite often diminishes at a period when you're starting to get things wrong, and then it will come back a bit as you focus on profit per member of staff, because it keeps your team really lean. And I think that's one of the best measurements. But the other measurement is that ultimately, what is the capital that you're investing going to do, and what is it going to bring you as a return on growth or as a return on a better app, and with that app that still has a consequence that in every case it comes back to selling. Comes back to more selling, more turnover, or more profit, or more growth, right? And somewhere there is a mathematical equation in whatever conversation you have that says, if today I value this business at X, and I bring in Y should be a percentage value that says, with Y, we're now going to get to the next growth phase where we may never need capital again. I mean, the one thing that I would say is, Jesus, if you can avoid capital injections and if you don't need them, bootstrap the shit out of it. What's the hurry? I think there's this slight misnomer that, everybody has to growth accelerate and become a billionaire overnight, whereas that is the 0.0000001% of the community, which is nobody nearly. The real truth is most businesses take 10 to 20 years to really deliver a grown-up, mature, repeatable strategic model that is proven and is just going to start spinning off money. And even then, Mr. Market gets involved and COVID happens, and every event company is nearly bankrupt because there's no income. Mm-hmm. Right? So it can be great, and then it can be an absolute disaster. It's just it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, I certainly found we were very reliant on our event revenue stream, and it was a massive wake-up call, you know, fortunately. And I think I can definitely say it was an opportunity. It was tough at the time, but it pushed us to make changes that we'd been afraid to make. And you know, hindsight's perfect, obviously, but it's always, sometimes these challenges are opportunities because they force us to make leaps that we know we need to, but we haven't been pushed to yet.
Yeah, I mean, we're exactly. And in fact, Michelle, I'm going to put out an ask because I think it's really interesting to see, actually, does this work? So you and I have given an hour of our time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to put an ask to the crowd. So the first ask is, if you know another person that should be in women's chapter, please introduce them to Michelle, because it's the network that looks after the network, and her hard work needs to be repaid. The second part is, and I'm really serious about this, I've got a home candle problem. It's our big candle. I should have brought one with me. And it's flipping July. And we haven't sold as many. I'm just thinking, is it July? The year's going so quickly. Yes, it is. But if
almost the end.
Correct. If anyone enjoys this conversation, they apply the Lara 20 code. I'll make sure it's open today. Go and buy something, but ideally buy my home candle, Lara 20. And if you're looking for that sort of stop, inhale, reset habit, every morning when you start work, or every time when you stop work, light the candle and give yourself a break. Give yourself the mental break and then rewrite your things to do list. I think it's about a £36 investment, less 20%, but it'll be worth every penny if ultimately you create a new habit that, and yes, I do find that candles sell more in the autumn. Inevitably they do. But I would suggest to you that people, one of the most powerful takeaways is look at what you're doing habitually and then change it for the better.
Yeah. Well, and just to say on the candles, I have some of Lara's candles, and I don't only use them for my kind of me time, which might be having a bath or cooking in the kitchen. I often light a candle when I'm cooking because that's my kind of creative time in the kitchen. But also for entertaining, for sharing with your friends. I often have my friends say that when they come to my house, they love the way that it smells.
Right.
And I like candles for myself, but that has an impact on how people feel when they come into your home and your space. And so I think we underestimate how we can share that with others.
Yeah, I mean, the trouble with having a fragrance brand myself is, unless I'm regularly applying it and reminding myself, I find it more difficult to absorb the candle, the smell. But every now and again, I go into our downstairs loo and I'm like, yes, that's so cool. So, So look, on going back to the investment piece, it also occurs to me that something I want to say to the people in your community is broaden their horizons, right? They've got to mix, because if you're working towards investment, you've got to have frogs that you can kiss and frogs that you can turn down. Mm-hmm. And actually, you're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs. There's a lot of competition out there for money. And again, be resilient. We talk about it. We tell ourselves we want our children to be more resilient. Well, how about us, right? It's a sweaty, knickered moment going and asking someone to back you. Of course it's a sweaty, knickered moment. It's bloody miserable. You're saying to someone, I've built something and I think you should risk your hard-earned money on it. So also be respectful of that process, and for God's sake, give yourself time, because it is like a building project. It takes double as long and costs double as much.
Yeah. And I have this conversation with Julia Elliott Brown all the time, who's into the arena and has helped many of the women in our community with fundraising advice and getting funding ready. Is that just because you've launched a business doesn't mean that you're ready to go out and look for investment. There is a whole lot of, other stuff that needs to happen. And to your point about, you can't ask anyone else to put their hard-earned cash into your business if you're not at a point that it's going to give them a visible return ultimately, or that they can see the future. Because I think there's a lot of kind of romanticism around this. Oh, I'll start a business and then I'll go out and get investment and then, we'll grow and then we'll go global. And there is a lot of really kind of grit that's involved in those points in between. For some people, it isn't like that. They're anomalies. But I think for the most people, you need to be, as you said, in profit, which is another thing that a lot of people underestimate,
It is
power
now.
of that.
You know, 2 years ago with the rose tinted spectacle of a wall of money and COVID and, you know, the to some extent a tech boom where a lot of the money went, which by the way, I think there's going to be a huge fallout, and it pleases me frankly, because I think we need to back the product and the service people, but that's a personal bias, obviously. I do think preparation, you know, that age-old thing, preparation will serve you well. It avoids piss poor performance. But equally, women procrastinate. So go start kissing frogs. You'll learn, because there's some really hideously ugly frogs out there, but you might learn something and they might introduce you to a better looking frog. That's how I see it. I mean, literally. And sometimes I sort of feel it in my head going, oh God, it's a disastrous frog. Never mind.
It feels like kind of an online dating.
That is. But I mean, you know, truthfully, it was for 2 years on the phone. Yeah. And I went, you know, and you never know, right? It's all this embarrassment about going, will you be quiet? He said, I'm very thirsty, Mum. Oh. Could you hear the dog drinking then? Sorry. So, you know, that hideousness around rejection, oh, sod it. Just get used to it. It happens all the time. More rejection, more choice. That's the way you should see it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, and it's such a relief to hear you say that, because, and I know this is part of a conversation we've had before where you have got really comfortable with people saying no to you. And it doesn't necessarily, it's not a failure necessarily. It's a rejection. It's just meaning, you know, need to keep looking. Yeah. And if you believe in yourself, it doesn't mean that you should be packing it in just because a few people said no. They weren't right for you anyway, if that was the case.
And actually, they may just be right later on down the line. So sometimes you have to go higher to go lower, or you need a different network, or so huge potential.
Well, Lara, I'm incredibly grateful for your time. I know how busy you are, and that you have a big frog to swallow, another one after this.
Yeah, we should stop swallowing frogs after this, but equally, you know, go out and build a strategy, be on the business more than in the business, right? That's the change that has to happen again.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the advantages with building a team, because that's certainly, from my perspective, what I've been able to, when you bring in people to help you and you learn to delegate, which is very difficult when it's something you feel passionate about.
Yep.
And you surround yourself with people who that passion is infectious for them, and as a result they take ownership of a part of your business, you can have that strategic view and be kind of freed up to look forward and go out and get those big balls, but also some of the ones, and then loosen up the ones in the bottom that might be blocking the funnel. But it means that you can be more looking forward as rather than just being in the business, which I think is such a valuable piece of advice. And I know that it sounds probably easier said than done. It's something to work toward.
Yeah, but it's that saying that anything worth having is worth working for, right? And you know, sod it. Sometimes it's miserable, and you know, sometimes you make a sacrifice, but I don't regret genuinely any of the sacrifices that I made in the process first time around. And I've learned, and I've got scars learning from the second and the next times around. And, you know, Yogi Bear's now at a stage where she's running her own business, and I hope that is a roaring success, but she's got an awesome performance grip yoga mat, versus, you know, Alistair at Gate 8 had to take a job elsewhere during COVID, but he's now come back and he's storming it because other luggage companies went out of business. Yeah. He just put his on, you know, so lots of ages and stages of stuff. Maybe you need to have a break. Maybe you need to take the whole of the rest of July and August off and go, do I miss my business? Because not much is going to happen. I mean, Jesus, the last 2 weeks of August, everybody's buggered off on holiday.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? So,
well, it's been, I can honestly say, a gift to have this hour with you. Thank you so much. It was way more than what I bargained for, so I'm very, very grateful, but I'm not going to apologize either, so thank you very much. And to everyone who's joined us today, we've had really, really good engagement. I will be posting on stories, if you're okay with that, Lara, your code, and if there's a link, or can it just be used on the Scentered site?
Just Lara 20.
Okay, on the Scentered site, and I'll post that on story so that everyone can find that easily. And as Lara said, if you know someone who you think could benefit from being part of the Women's Chapter community, please let them know. We'd love to hear from them. And equally, if you do not have a scented product in your handbag or in your home, you need to have one. They are incredible and designed by somebody who really solved a problem that many of us might not have known we had. But using your scented balms, especially for people who travel and move around a lot, so just pop one in your handbag. They're brilliant gifts.
Just to stop, inhale and reset and give yourself a break, because God only knows I was suffering from stress and I didn't even realize it. So we can help each other.
And it doesn't interfere with the fragrance you wear or anything, because I'm someone who really struggles with new fragrances because I've worn the same perfume for 15 years, but I love the scented balms. They are really kind of, you just smell them on your pulse points, you can put them on your temples, and the candles are amazing. So if you don't have one, get one for your home or your handbag. That's the treat you need to get for yourself this summer. Thank you so much, Lara. I'm eternally grateful. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.
And gotta go.
Bye.
Bye.
And for anyone who wants to watch the recording of this, it will be saved to the Women's Chapter feed on our Instagram, so you'll be able to access it. But I'll share some snippets of it to our stories as well. Thank you, everyone. Bye.